Chuck, everybody's talking about this Borgonzi quote and Brinker quote down there in Tennessee. Now, Borgonzi has been brought in as the general manager. Brinker is the president of football operations. Borgonzi is handling the draft and free agency. Brinker is the one that's going to cut it down to the final 53. They're very tight. They're on the same page. Brinker was on a local radio station with Ramon Foster and a few others, and this is what he had to say about that number one overall pick that they have. Are you going to trade it, or are you going to utilize that pick that you have down there in Tennessee? Here's the president of football operations for the Tennessee Titans, Chad Brinker.
Yeah, we got to look at all the options. But the one thing I will say, if there's a generational talent, you don't pass that up. You can't pass that up. And if we feel that there's a generational talent right there, what we call a blue player, a guy that is a franchise-type player, the player that tips the field in your favor every time they step on the field, like you cannot pass that up. But we'll also look at all the options, not only at the number one overall pick, but in all the rounds. I mean, we got to see what the value is. We got to see what's on the table. We got to, do what's best for the Tennessee Titans and helping us build a football team that can sustain over time. And I've emphasized how important the draft is, that the core of this roster is going to be built through the draft. We're looking at all those options.
Very interesting. He was brought in 2023. Callahan was brought in last year. Now the GM, Borgonzi, out of Boston's been brought in, this year. So everybody's at different times. Allegedly, Borgonzi and Brinker are on the same page. They'll be the ones creating the roster. What's that mean for Callahan? We shall see. But a once-in-a-generation type player potentially at number one. Now, this has obviously sent ripple effects through it all, and we'll talk to Daniel Jeremiah in a second. Is that Travis Hunter is he talking about? Abdul Carter, who's the once-in-a-generation player that we're potentially missing or not thinking about? But there's a AFC South conversation taking place. Connor has a question for you.
Yeah, Lombo, Mike Borgonzi gets hired as the GM, and now a lot of stuff has come out. I believe the president of football operations, Brink, will have final say. Brinker, excuse me. Will have final say on the 53-man roster, but then Borgonzi will be responsible for the free agents and the draft process. And then, of course, Brinker will report to Strunk. Not sure with Borgonzi. What does this say kind of about the Titans' whole operation? And then where does this kind of leave Callahan, just because he is the head coach? What is his role? Is he going to be involved, do you think, with the draft or anything like that? Or is this kind of a three-headed monster in Tennessee now?
Well, you know how I feel about committees, and they've never dedicated a monument to one. So this sounds like a committee to me. Look, I think Brinker's been running the team. I think even when Rand Carthon was there, Brinker was kind of in charge of pretty much everything. So he's going to remain there. And obviously his background has got to have to find a way to utilize his skill set as a guy who can draft and develop a team. I think the real question comes into what kind of team do they want to have? They transitioned into a Cincinnati Bengal team, and it cost Rand Carthon his job, essentially. They got rid of the big power back. They went to nickel backs and Spears and Pollard, and so their offensive line couldn't run the ball, and they're counting on Will Levis to be a good player. There's a lot of calculations that need to come true. For Tennessee to be good, they better make sure they're right about Will Levis, and that's Brinker's job to do because he was there when they drafted him. He's been a part of it, and I think that's ultimately going to be tied to what Callahan does. I think Cincinnati, if you copy their offensive program, you better be damn sure the quarterback's good because Burrow makes that thing go. It isn't the play design, it's the quarterback design and how he plays. So the Tennessee, in terms of all the moves they made in the past, they can blame them on Rand Carthon, but somebody else was signing off on him. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, and what do you think about Callahan, Chuck? What do you think about Callahan, the coach's position in this entire thing?
Anytime you can tell right now, like these coaches are coming in together with a GM. Anytime it's one or the other, head coach in place, new GM, or vice versa, unless there's a prior relationship there, and just win, Callie. just win and win big.
Yeah, you win quick, too.
Been down that road.
Yeah, you have.
Been down that road.
GM comes in, not with you, new GM.
Lose a quarterback.
Yeah.
Don't have a Q. Lost a few games, and that was that.
Lame duck, Chuck, is what they were saying.
We'll hear everybody's on the same page, but there's a difference between being on the what Coach is saying is so true. What you find is everybody's going to tell you in Tennessee they're on the same page until they lose the game. being on the same page is meaningless. Being aligned is what matters most. And alignment can only come from the GM and the head coach being tied at the hip. Philosophically. Now, they're going to argue and go back and forth, but they got to see the game the same way. And this is where I think most teams make many mistakes. I mean, Brett Veach does an incredible job in Kansas City for Andy Reid. But he's tied to Andy Reid philosophically. They see the game the same way. And so that allows you to find players, because remember, scouting is not about finding. Scouting is about eliminating. And so you eliminate players you don't want. You don't find players, you eliminate the guys that don't fit. And when you're not on the same page, you argue about who you're eliminating. And that becomes a rift within the building. Look, I think Tennessee went through it. They wanted a change to become Cincinnati's offense. I don't see how anybody can be Cincinnati's offense unless they bring Joe Burrow with them.
Yeah, and Joe Burrow obviously is a weapon, and we'll be excited to see what awards he wins, if he wins any awards at NFL Honors, up for Comeback Player of the Year, and I believe offense, whatever the case. Lame duck down there is such an interesting situation, because you brought up Andy Reid and Brett Veach, how they're on the same page. And Brett Veach, and obviously the Chiefs front office, we have that here. Chris Ballard came in from the Chiefs front office. Andy Reid, supreme commander there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, look, and what Andy's so good at, everybody thinks when you hear Supreme Commander that they want to do everything. No, Andy Reid gets everybody aligned. It's what Bill Walsh did. Everybody was aligned. It's what Belichick does. Everybody has to think philosophically, this is where we're going. It doesn't mean we're not going to disagree on things, but we're going to be aligned on how we're going to get there.
There's seemingly no Supreme Commander in Tennessee, right?
No.
But
none.
Borgonzi said he and Brinker have great relationship and admiration for each other since 2009. Never worked together, but since 2009 they've had a lot of admiration for each other, right?
Yeah, just through the circles and doing what they do.
But this one has free agency and draft. This one has final 53, and then this one's got to coach them all. Okay, that's a lot of people that have to get on the same page.
That's weird.
Good luck. I think it'll happen.
This whole notion about who has control of the 53 is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. I mean, it's so stupid, right? You can only dress 46 players, right? And so what Ron Wolf did in Green Bay with Mike Holmgren is the smartest thing to do. He told Mike Holmgren, look, Mike, you got 50 players. You dress whoever you want. Joe Gibbs did the same thing with Bobby Beathard. But player 51 to the rest of the team, that's really for the personnel department to decide on who's got a future. So we can develop talent, but you're not going to hurt your roster currently. Like, I control the 53. I mean, seriously, that's just a power grab. I mean, those 7 guys can't dress anyway.
All right. Sounds like it's going to go great down there.
Yeah.
You know, Borgonzi is from
Everett, Mass.
Which is
great football town. A lot of history. A lot of great players have come out of Everett, Mass.
A lot of Italians, right?
Over
there?
Yeah, too many, some would say. But
whoa. See his shirt.
Some would say. I didn't say I did.
I just want to let you know. I heard Brinker talking to Ramon Foster and another local radio show down there. It said, if you have a once-in-a-generation talent, number one, you have to take that player. Blue player is what we call them. Like, once-in-a-generation, because they have the number 1 overall pick. But then also we'll listen to everything else. Who's he potentially talking about there? Is that Travis Hunter? Is that Abdul Carter? And whenever it comes to quarterbacks, everybody's still talking Shador and Cam Ward, really, are the only first-round grades? And how do you kind of see it all operating?
Yeah, for me, Abdul Carter is the best player in the draft. So when I heard that and just like blue player, an elite player, someone who's going to step in, be a Pro Bowler, like right out of the chute, that was what I heard. And to me, Travis Hunter is so unique in how you can use him and all the different things he can do. So that was at least perked me up a little bit that this might not just be, whether it's Cam Ward versus Shador, they have a need at quarterback. It's going to be one of those 2 guys. That perked me up a little bit to say maybe they're taking a long-range view and just taking the best player. To me, Abdul Carter at a premier position, I would argue the second most important position on the field. To have a guy at that level of a talent, I'd be all in on that.
And he played through an injury playing in the Orange Bowl, which I respect and appreciate, too. So
dominated.
Yeah, he's a
one
dog.
arm.
And Drew Rosenhaus said, I would have been disrespecting him and his family if I would have told him not to play for the good of business. So it feels like he's a guy...